Hello YouTube. Red Dead Redemption 2 was released yesterday. Predictably enough, it's received extremely high praise, with people talking about its attention to detail, its world, its mechanics. And I'd already made up my mind long before it was released about where my stance was going to be with it. But morbid curiosity got the better of me, and thanks to Amazon Prime Now, I was able to pick it up on day of release a little bit later than anticipated, because there was something went wrong at the picking factory and it took a little bit longer to arrive than it was supposed to. But I got it anyway and I started playing it. I put about 3 hours into it so far, and my overall response to it has been an overwhelming meh, which was about what I expected. But I review video games kind of for a living. I don't get paid for it, but I do get free games. And there have been games that I've really enjoyed that I've given a meh score to, and games that I haven't liked that I've given fairly high scores to. Because whilst it's true that you cannot objectively review art, it's a purely subjective medium. Well, it's a purely subjective entity, I suppose, because there are various mediums within art. There are things about art that you can review objectively. For films, for example, you could comment on the framing, the quality of the focus, whether you can hear what's being said, that kind of thing. For art, as in paintings, you could comment on the use of colour, whether it's, depending on what kind of art it is. I mean, if it's one that's trying to look realistic, you can obviously judge whether the paint, the tone of the paint is accurate to skin tone, whether it's clear, whether the brush strokes are done well, whether it's sloppy, you know, they paint outside the lines, basically. And with video games, it's even easier because there are a lot of technical aspects which you can look at objectively. Frame rate, for example, texture resolution, animations, although there seems to be a weird amount of difference as to what people consider good animations. People kept raving about the animations in Rage now all the time, and they were so fucking wooden and preset, and it was just like one motion and then they just freeze in place. It was a bit there anyway. So it got me to thinking, am I a contrarian? Yes, I am. There's no question about that. I know full well that I am. But more importantly, am I just a contrarian? Is it my age? Is it my cultural heritage? Is it my gender? Is it my life experiences? And again, the answer is yes to all of those, and many other factors that I'm probably not considering. So, what does that mean? Does that mean that Red Dead Redemption is a great game, and I'm just being bar humbug and grumpy about it? Does it mean that it's actually just as average as I think it is, and everybody else is just wowed by the advertising campaign? And again, the answer is yes to both of those things, because it is primarily subjective. As much as we can look at the objective facts, the end result is personal opinion. So, that leads me to wondering, what makes a good game? Is it sales figures? Maybe, but I disagree. Being a successful game, being played by a lot of people, being played and liked by a lot of people, doesn't make a game good. There is only one thing that makes a game good: being a good game. But what classifies something as a good game is completely dependent on the individual. So all of those people giving Red Dead Redemption, they're really high, top marks, best game ever. They're not wrong. They may be biased because of external factors, like they may want to not be ostracized for going against the mold. They might want to make sure that they keep their rights, they're cozying up with the developers. That does happen, developers and publishers. That absolutely does happen. That's been shown time and again. It's not as rampant as some people think. This idea of paid reviews, I'm sure that does happen, but it's not an epidemic like some people would have you believe. But there is the unconscious pressure. And having now bought and had games gifted to me and gotten review codes and reviewed them all from different sources like that, both gifted by people that I like, gifted by just random people that had spare ones, that kind of thing. That does factor into my ultimate assessment of how good a game is. If I get it for free, I actually tend to be more critical. Oddly enough, you'd think it would be the other way around, but I tend to be more critical because I overcompensate. But I know most people don't. If it's given for free, especially if it's from somebody that they want to keep a good relationship, whether that's because they directly like that person, like it's a friend or a lover, or because they have a financial commitment to that because it's where their paycheck comes from. If they can't get the games, they can't review them. But that's, of course, you can always get them. You can pay for them. So, whilst they do that, I go the other way because I'm aware of that fact, and I like to think that I've kept a pretty good balance. So I'm going to say, based on what I've played, I've only played 3 hours. It's not right to assess a game off such a short amount of time, unless it's a game that only takes 3 hours. It's okay, actually. It's decent. It's about what I expected. It's pretty much hit my expectations. Though there is one big flaw it has. Do you finally gotten out of that fucking tutorial, or most of the tutorial, at least the big part of it? It makes a big deal about the fact that you have a beard and tells you have to shave it off. And I was like, fuck you, game. I actually want to live through this. Anyway, getting way off track. The important thing to take away from this is that you don't have to justify whether you like or dislike a video game or any kind of art. If you like it, you like it. And if somebody points out flaws with it, objective flaws, things that are actually wrong with the product, you don't have to suddenly change your mind or backpedal or justify it and try and defend it. I mean, you can defend it, of course, if you want. If you think that they're missing something important in some other way, like people talk about plot holes, but a lot of things that people pick up on as plot holes is just something that isn't addressed right there and then. It's typically something that is actually set up somewhere else, or if not implied, or explicitly stated in some cases. But either way you take it, there's nothing wrong with that. If you feel the need to defend it, then by all means defend the thing that you love, defend the thing that you are fond of. If you don't, then don't. Somebody might actually point things out to you in something that you love and make you realize, you know what, this isn't as good as I thought it was, and there's nothing wrong with that either. Tastes change over time. When I was younger, my favourite music was stuff that was in the charts, was in the Billboard charts, because it was all I was really exposed to. Looking back on them, a lot of them I still am very fond of, because I grew up in the 80s and there was some phenomenally great music in the charts in the 80s. 90s is when it started to get a lot more manufactured, though that began in the 80s, but it became more prevalent in the 90s. But there was still great music in the 90s as well, and there's some more recent stuff that I'm incredibly fond of. And some of them I've changed my mind. Some of them I've gone back and forth on. Aliens, for example. I loved that film when I first saw it when I was a kid. For several years, I used to watch Alien and Aliens every day after coming home from school for about 2 years. I have literally seen both of those films over 1,000 times. And then I didn't watch it for a while. Then I watched it again. I thought, my God, this is sheer shite. This is utter shite. It's so cheesy. It's so self-indulgent. And I went completely off it. And then I watched it again about 5 years later when I was in my late 20s, mid to late 20s. And I look back at what I thought as a teenager. I was like, yeah, as a teenager, I was right. It is cheesy. It is kind of shitty. It is self-indulgent, but it's also self-aware. And that made me realise that it was even better than I originally thought it was, although I still maintain that the first film is the best in the series. And that happens. People will change their opinion. You'll swing back and forth on things. You'll like it, then you won't like it. Then you'll dig your heels in, you'll insist, and you just have to make the decision for yourself. Don't be so uptight about it. Like things, don't like things. That's entirely up to you. There's nothing wrong with that. Whichever way you fall. The only time it becomes a problem is if you start trying to convince somebody else for their own good. That never goes well. If you want to have a discussion with them about it and explain to them where you stand on it, that's great. That's what you should be doing. Not trying to convince them that you are right. Only put forward your side, your take, your hot take on the subject matter. That's the way everybody should be doing it. That's the way I try to write my reviews. I think some of them have completely missed the mark. But I'm still learning. I'm still getting better at this. And I think I always will. I hope I always will. Because that's a story for another time. But something else I've realised is people who are talented and know they are talented make some of the most overwhelmingly painfully average work that you'll ever come across. People like the people at Rockstar who make fairly average games. They're very competent though, and they have a great veneer over them which sucks a lot of people in. But they know that they're talented, and they rely on that talent to see them through. And that's a problem, because far from no longer requiring any effort and no longer needing to learn, the people who are talented are the ones who have to put the most effort into learning, into improving, into doing something different, because they're the ones that can most easily fall back on their laurels and just let things coast along. And I think that's what's happened in the case of Rockstar, and I know I'm guilty of that too. And that's not a good thing. But we'll talk about that in more detail some other time. Right now the important thing is to remember that there's nothing wrong with your opinion. There are no wrong opinions, only misguided ones. You can have an inaccurate opinion based on incorrect data, but your opinion will never be wrong. So don't ever be ashamed of it. Just stick to it. And thank you for listening.